You hear the stamp. Not a gentle tap, not a polite mark. A violent, final ador of authority. Wax receives it. Ink dries like blood. The decree breathes out of the palace and into the streets, as written in Esther 3:10 through Esther 3:13. The king's signet ring presses the order into existence, and now the order runs faster than mercy. Runners seize the letters. Horses snort. Sand kicks. Doors slam. The messengers scatter like arrows, exactly as stated in Esther 3:13 and Esther 3:14, sent to every province, every language, every people. The words do not ask. They command. On one appointed day, an entire people is marked for destruction. Inside the fortress of Susa, the city holds its breath. Then the breath breaks. People read. Hands shake. Mothers pull children close. Shopkeepers stare at the parchment like it is a serpent. The confusion spreads through the citadel as it is spoken in Esther 3:15. And while the city trembles, the king sits down to drink with Haman. That detail lands like a stone in the stomach. Esther 3:15, death announced, and power pours wine. Now you stand near Mordecai. You do not meet him in comfort. You meet him in rupture. He hears the decree, and something in him tears. He rips his clothes. He drags rough fabric apart with his hands until the sound is like ripping a life in two. He puts on sackcloth. He throws ashes on his head. He does not whisper. He cries out with a loud and bitter cry in the middle of the city, exactly as written in Esther 4:1. He moves toward the king's gate, but he cannot enter dressed like grief. The law blocks him at the doorway, as Esther 4:2 says. So he stands where officials pass. He stands where news travels. He stands where someone inside might finally feel what is happening outside. And the pain is not only his. In every province, wherever the king's command and decree arrive, there is great mourning among the Jews, as declared in Esther 4:3. Fasting erupts. Weeping erupts. Wailing erupts. Many lie in sackcloth and ashes. The empire calls it policy. The people feel it as a death sentence. Inside the palace, Esther does not hear the stamp. She does not hear the ripping cloth. She does not hear the bitter cry at first. She lives behind walls that mute suffering. She wears a crown that muffles screams. She sits in a place designed to keep reality out. Then the message slips in. One servant, one breathless report. Mordecai stands outside in sackcloth and ashes. Esther hears, and her body reacts before her mind catches up. She is in deep distress, as stated in Esther 4:4. She sends clothes for Mordecai to put on so he can come inside. She tries to cover the wound. She tries to pull him back into normal. But Mordecai refuses. He refuses the clothes, as Esther 4:4 says. He refuses to dress up the truth. He refuses to pretend the fire is not spreading. So Esther sends Hathach, one of the king's eunuchs assigned to her, to learn what troubles Mordecai and why, just as written in Esther 4:5. Hathach moves fast, crossing the distance between palace silence and street agony. He finds Mordecai in the open square of the city in front of the king's gate, exactly where Esther 4:6 places him. Mordecai does not speak in riddles. He tells him everything. He names the sum of money Haman promises to pay into the royal treasury for the destruction of the Jews, as Esther 4:7 says. Mordecai does not let the threat stay abstract. He makes it tangible. He makes it countable. Then Mordecai presses the written copy of the decree into Hathach's hands, as stated in Esther 4:8. He does not say, "Trust me." He says, "Look." He sends proof into the palace. And with it, he sends a command. Show it to Esther, explain it to her, and instruct her to go into the king's presence to beg for mercy and plead with him for her people, Esther 4:8. Now the paper moves through corridors. Now the ink that promises death enters the place that pretends it cannot happen. Hathach returns and reports to Esther, just like Esther 4:9 says. She looks at the decree. She sees the day. She sees the scale. She sees her people named as prey. Her throat tightens. Her hands go cold. She sends a message back to Mordecai through Hathach, and she speaks the law out loud, exactly as written in Esther 4:11. All the king's officials and the people of the royal provinces know that for any man or woman who approaches the king in the inner court without being summoned, the king has but one law, that they be put to death. You feel the trap. The law is a wall. The inner court is a blade. Even a queen has no immunity from an uninvited approach. Esther adds the one thin exception. The king may extend the gold scepter and spare their life. But then she lands the detail that makes her courage shake. She has not been summoned to see the king for 30 days, as Esther 4:11 says. 30 days. A month of silence. A month where favor feels uncertain. A month where the king's face could be warmth or wrath. Hathach carries her words back. Mordecai hears them, and he does not soothe her fear. He does not pat her head and say, "It is all right." He sends back a reply that breaks the last illusion of safety. Esther 4:13 comes alive in his mouth. Do not think that because you are in the king's house you alone of all the Jews will escape. He pushes the truth deeper, like a surgeon cutting to save a life. If you remain silent at this time, relief and deliverance for the Jews will arise from another place. But you and your father's family will perish. Esther 4:14. Then Mordecai speaks the line that strikes like lightning through a closed room. And who knows but that you have come to your royal position for such a time as this. Esther 4:14. That sentence does not float. It lands. It presses on Esther's ribs. It makes the crown feel heavy. It makes the palace feel small. You can feel the crisis sharpen. It is no longer only about survival. It is about obedience. It is about purpose. It is about whether her life is merely protected or actually poured out for others. Esther stands at a threshold in her soul. She can cling to the thin shield of privilege, or she can step into the inner court and risk everything. The decree outside is already moving. Time does not pause for her emotions. So Esther answers, not with denial, not with delay, with a plan that comes from dependence. Esther 4:16 becomes breath in her mouth. Go, gather together all the Jews who are in Susa and fast for me. Do not eat or drink for 3 days, night or day. I and my attendants will fast as you do. Then she steps into the sentence that sounds like surrender and steal at the same time. Esther 4:16. When this is done, I will go to the king, even though it is against the law. And if I perish, I perish. Mordecai does not argue. He does not negotiate. Esther 4:17 moves him into action. Mordecai goes away and carries out all of Esther's instructions. Now the fast begins. Hunger becomes a clock. Dry mouths become prayers without fancy language. The palace becomes a place of trembling purpose. The streets become a gathering of quiet strength. And in this moment, you feel the strange power of the book of Esther. God's name does not appear on the page, but God's hand is everywhere in the motion. The decree runs, but so does courage. The law of death speaks, but so does fasting faith. Stay here and feel it, because this is the moment where most lives turn. This is the moment where you know what is right, but the consequences look lethal. This is the moment where fear quotes rules and says you are not allowed to act. This is the moment where faith does not deny danger, but still steps forward. And you ask yourself, what is my inner court? What room am I afraid to enter? What truth am I delaying? What obedience do I keep pushing until later because later feels safer? The decree in Persia is ink on parchment, but your decree may be a diagnosis on paper. It may be divorce documents. It may be a betrayal that feels official. It may be a system that does not care about your tears. It may be the voice that says, nothing will change. Esther 4:11 reminds you that fear always has a law. Fear always has a reason. Fear always has a file folder. It says, if you step forward, you die. Maybe not physically, but socially, financially, relationally, emotionally. But Esther 4:14 also stands in your path like a pillar. Deliverance does not die because one person trembles. God is not trapped. God is not cornered. And yet, your silence still costs you something. Your calling still matters. So Esther 4:16 becomes an invitation to a different kind of strength. Not the strength of pretending you are unafraid. The strength of fasting. The strength of gathering faithful people. The strength of saying, I cannot control outcomes, but I can obey. And now, as the fast continues, you look ahead beyond the verses we live in today. You know an inner court is coming. You know a scepter must lift or death wins. You know timing must turn or the decree consumes. But for now, the story holds you in the 3-day tension. Esther 4:16, where nothing looks solved yet. The decree still exists. Haman still smiles. The king still sits in power. Mordecai still wears ashes. Esther still feels the weight of law. This is where faith is most real, when you cannot see the next page, but you choose obedience anyway. And now I speak to you gently, here at the edge of your own decision. You are not saved because you fast well. You are not loved because you perform bravery. You are held because Jesus holds you. There is a greater story that Esther's courage points toward. One day, another steps into a court far more terrifying than Persia's. He walks toward a throne not to preserve his own life, but to give it. He carries the death sentence of his people in his own body. And he does not say, "If I perish, as a final uncertainty." He lays down his life and takes it up again so that you can live. So you do not step forward to earn love. You step forward because you already are loved. In Christ, you are not an orphan trying to impress heaven. You are a beloved child walking with your Father even when his voice feels quiet. Here is the spiritual verdict. When God seems hidden, he is still present, ruling through timing, courage, and the unseen turning of hearts. Here is the mirror. The papers in your world may feel signed, sealed, and unstoppable. But Esther 3:13 through Esther 4:16 shows you that a decree is not the same as destiny when the Lord is at work, even without being named. And here is the invitation. Right now, bring your inner court to God. Speak it plainly. No performance. No pretending. If you can, whisper this. Lord, I am afraid. I feel the law of consequences. I feel the risk. But I believe you are present even when I cannot see you. Give me wisdom for timing. Give me courage to speak. Give me people to fast and pray with me. And because Jesus lives, help me step forward. Amen. For those who stay when the last amen fades, there is one final piece of the puzzle. Not a different theme. The same theme, tightened like a knot. Another decree. Another empire. Another faithful life trapped between law and death. You still feel Esther's inner court hanging in the air. You still taste the dry mouth of a fast. You still hear the rustle of parchment that decides who gets to breathe. Then a new sound answers it. Not in Susa's streets. Not at Xerxes' gate. A different palace. A different throne room. The same human hunger for control. A council gathers close to a king who likes order because order makes him feel like a god. The air fills with confident voices. Hands gesture. Eyes sharpen. Smiles hide knives. They speak like they agree with each other, but their unity is a trap. They do not come to protect the king. They come to erase a man they cannot manipulate. His name is Daniel. The officials lean in and turn envy into policy. Their mouths shape the line that sounds patriotic and smells like murder. They say what is written in Daniel 6:7, not as a quotation, but as their plan made audible. The royal administrators, prefects, satraps, advisors, and governors have all agreed that the king should issue an edict and enforce the decree that anyone who prays to any god or human being during the next 30 days, except to you, your majesty, shall be thrown into the lion's den. The words hang there. A polished cage. A holy silence becomes illegal. Dependence becomes treason. Prayer becomes a crime punishable by teeth. King Darius listens. Pride stirs. The idea of being the only permitted address in the kingdom tastes sweet to him. He does not see the hook. He does not ask who this decree really targets. His hand moves toward the table. A scribe is ready. A seal waits. Wax softens. The moment tightens. And the narrator inside your bones whispers the exact sentence as the action becomes irreversible. So King Darius put the decree in writing, just as it stands in Daniel 6:9. It is never only ink. It is never only paper. It is a date with death for someone who refuses to pretend that God is not God. The decree leaves the room and travels through streets and corridors. Doors open. Doors close. Messengers move. Tongues repeat the law until it sounds normal, until it sounds inevitable. Daniel hears it. He does not need a prophet to interpret it. He understands exactly what it demands. Silence your prayers or lose your life. He stands in the middle of ordinary tasks. He feels the weight of a choice that is not really a choice. The decree does not ask him to commit a new sin. It asks him to stop doing what he already does. That is how traps work. He turns and walks to his house. He climbs steps. He enters his upstairs room. Windows open toward Jerusalem. The city of his longing is far away, but his allegiance is not. And the scene refuses to slow down into sentiment. Daniel does not hold a committee meeting. He does not workshop a strategy. He does not trade obedience for survival. He drops to his knees. What happens next is not commentary. It is the verse living inside a body. The description becomes Daniel 6:10 as if the words are written on the air. Now when Daniel learned that the decree had been published, he went home to his upstairs room where the windows opened toward Jerusalem. 3 times a day he got down on his knees and prayed, giving thanks to his God, just as he had done before. Giving thanks. Not only asking, not only pleading. Thanks, even when the lions are already fed. Outside, shadows move. The men who write the trap now hunt for proof. They do not want to accuse him without witnesses. They want to watch him choose death with his own hands. They gather at his house. They do not knock. They do not announce themselves. They listen. They peer. They find what they want. And the verse becomes motion again. Daniel 6:11 becomes their breathing. Then these men went as a group and found Daniel praying and asking God for help. They do not rush in to stop him. They do not care about the king's honor. They care about Daniel's removal. So they turn and run to the palace, carrying prayer like contraband. Their feet slap stone. Their clothes sway. Their mouths rehearse the performance of loyalty. They enter the king's presence and speak the law back to him like a mirror he cannot escape. They press him with Daniel 6:12 as if it is a weapon. Did you not publish a decree that during the next 30 days anyone who prays to any god or human being except to you, your majesty, would be thrown into the lion's den? The king answers without thinking, because he believes his own permanence. Daniel 6:12 becomes his reply. The decree stands, in accordance with the law of the Medes and Persians, which cannot be repealed. The trap tightens. The officials' eyes flash. Now they speak the name. Now they set the blade on the king's own throat, because a king who cannot keep his law is a weak king. They say Daniel 6:13, and the sentence is cold as iron. Daniel, who is one of the exiles from Judah, pays no attention to you, your majesty, or to the decree you put in writing. He still prays 3 times a day. Pays no attention. That is their spin. Daniel pays attention to something higher. Daniel pays attention to the living God. Darius hears it, and a different emotion rises. Not pride this time. Regret. His face changes. His stomach drops. He realizes he signs a weapon into someone else's hand. He realizes the decree that strokes his ego now demands blood. He moves. He speaks quickly. He tries to find a loophole. He tries to rescue Daniel without losing face. Daniel 6:14 becomes his frantic day. When the king heard this, he was greatly distressed. He was determined to rescue Daniel and made every effort until sundown to save him. Until sundown. He pushes time like a man pushing a boulder uphill. But time does not bend for him. The law does not soften. The officials return as a group. They return like wolves returning to a wounded animal. They do not offer solutions. They offer pressure. They speak Daniel 6:15 right into his hesitation. Remember, your majesty, that according to the law of the Medes and Persians, no decree or edict that the king issues can be changed. That sentence feels familiar. A law that cannot be changed. An inner court that cannot be entered. A policy that cannot be questioned. Empires love unchangeable laws because it makes their power feel divine. Darius exhales. He gives the order. Soldiers move. Chains clink. The sound of doors opening becomes a sound of doom. Daniel is brought out. He does not thrash. He does not beg. He does not curse the king. He walks steady, like a man whose life is already placed in God's hands. They take him to the pit. The lion's den waits like a mouth. The air around it is sour with old fear. The growl underneath is not imagination. It is hunger. Darius steps close, and the king's voice shakes with something like faith he does not fully understand. He says Daniel 6:16 as a blessing that sounds like a plea. May your God, whom you serve continually, rescue you. The words are not decoration. They are a confession that the king's power ends at the edge of this pit. They lower Daniel. He disappears into shadow. A stone is brought. Hands strain. The stone covers the opening. Seals are pressed into wax. Authority tries to make the outcome permanent. Daniel becomes locked away like a problem. Night falls, but the king cannot buy sleep. He returns to his palace, yet the palace feels like a prison. He refuses food. He refuses distraction. The verse becomes his restless body in Daniel 6:18. Then the king returned to his palace and spent the night without eating and without any entertainment being brought to him. And he could not sleep. The king lies awake while Daniel lies surrounded by death. One man tries to control an empire and cannot control his own conscience. Another man refuses to control anything and entrusts his life to God. Hours grind forward. Darkness feels thick. Each breath is a decision to keep trusting. And somewhere in that dark den, Daniel keeps being Daniel. He keeps being a man who prays. He keeps being a man who gives thanks. He keeps being a man who knows that God is not absent just because the law is loud. Morning comes like a blade of light. Darius does not lounge. He does not eat. He moves fast, driven by dread and hope fused together. Daniel 6:19 becomes his sprint. At the first light of dawn, the king got up and hurried to the lion's den. He reaches the sealed stone. He orders it moved. Men strain again. The opening yawns. The smell of the den rises. The king leans over the mouth of death and shouts a name into the dark. His voice cracks with fear. He speaks Daniel 6:20 as if Daniel is still alive and he cannot bear the alternative. Daniel, servant of the living God, has your God, whom you serve continually, been able to rescue you from the lions? Silence stretches. The den holds its breath. The king's men stare down. The air is tight enough to snap. Then the darkness answers with a living voice. Not a scream, not a sob. A greeting that cuts through the empire like a sword of peace. Daniel speaks Daniel 6:21, and the words ring clean. May the king live forever. The king's knees weaken. Relief hits him like water. Daniel continues, and now the unseen hand becomes visible through speech. Daniel 6:22 becomes his testimony in the present tense of the moment. My God sent his angel, and he shut the mouths of the lions. They have not hurt me, because I was found innocent in his sight, nor have I ever done any wrong before you, your majesty. The lions have mouths, but they do not have permission. The den is full of power, but it is not the highest power. The king's face changes completely. Joy breaks through him like sunrise. He gives orders that do not hesitate. He does not negotiate with fear now. He commands action. They pull Daniel up. Hands grab arms. Feet find stone. Daniel rises out of the pit alive, not merely surviving, but untouched. And the narrative does not let you miss it. Daniel 6:23 stands like a verdict over the whole night. The king was overjoyed and gave orders to lift Daniel out of the den. And when Daniel was lifted from the den, no wound was found on him, because he had trusted in his God. Because he had trusted, not because he had manipulated, not because he had flattered, not because he had hidden. Trusted. Justice moves next, swift and terrifying. The men who weaponize law against righteousness do not get to pretend they are innocent bystanders. They are architects of violence. The king acts. Guard sees the accusers. The den opens again. The sound changes. The lions do what lions do when God does not command restraint. The empire learns what it means to fight against the living God. Then Darius does something no one expects from a ruler who just tried to make himself the only permitted address in the kingdom. He rewrites the atmosphere. He issues a new decree, not to inflate himself, but to honor the God who shuts lions' mouths. His words are not soft. They travel through the same channels as the old decree. They run through the same streets. They enter the same homes. They become the new official reality. And his mouth speaks Daniel 6:26 through Daniel 6:27 like a proclamation that turns the kingdom's spine. I issue a decree that in every part of my kingdom people must fear and reverence the God of Daniel. For he is the living God, and he endures forever. His kingdom will not be destroyed. His dominion will never end. He rescues and he saves. He performs signs and wonders in the heavens and on the earth. He has rescued Daniel from the power of the lions. The king who tries to replace God ends up announcing God. The law that tries to silence prayer ends up broadcasting the living God. Now let the connection hit you. Esther stands at a door with a law that threatens death. Daniel stands at a den with a law that promises death. Esther hears, if you approach uninvited, you die. Daniel hears, if you pray, you die. Both hear the empires say, this is final. This is sealed. This cannot be repealed. But in both stories, the true king never panics. The true king never loses track of his people. The true king never asks permission from a human decree to be God. In Susa, deliverance moves through hidden timing and brave intercession. In Babylon, deliverance moves through stubborn prayer and an angel in the dark. Different methods, same hand. You feel the theme deepen. Sometimes faith looks like entering the inner court when your knees shake. Sometimes faith looks like opening your windows when the decree is published. And this is where the hidden track presses into your life, not as an abstract lesson, but as a call to action. Because the world still writes decrees. Maybe not on scrolls, maybe not with signet rings, but still with policies, social rules, threats, and pressure that says, do not pray, do not speak, do not obey, do not risk. The trap often sounds reasonable. Just for 30 days. Just be quiet for a season. Just hide your faith until it is safe again. Just close the windows. Just keep it private. But Daniel does not treat prayer like a hobby. He treats prayer like oxygen. He does not treat God like a weekend idea. He serves continually. And the king accidentally says the truth out loud. Your God, whom you serve continually. Continually means there is no safe day to stop being faithful. Continually means you do not bargain away obedience to buy comfort. Daniel's upstairs room is not a stage. It is a habit, just as he had done before. Daniel 6:10 says, and that phrase matters. It means he is not suddenly brave because the story needs a hero. He is steady because he is practiced. That is the secret strength many people never see until crisis comes. Not dramatic courage in the moment. Quiet faithfulness before the moment. And yet the story is not telling you to be reckless for attention. Daniel does not pray to provoke. He prays because he cannot not pray. He prays because God is real. Also, do not miss this. Daniel's deliverance is spectacular, but the real miracle begins earlier. It begins when a man decides to kneel instead of calculating. It begins when giving thanks rises in him while the empire sharpens its teeth. If you are in a season where God feels hidden, Daniel gives you a different kind of evidence. Not evidence that danger is fake. Evidence that God is present in the middle of danger. Evidence that obedience is still possible even when outcomes are not guaranteed. And if you are in a season where the law feels final, Darius himself becomes a warning and a comfort. A warning because pride signs papers without thinking. A comfort because even kings cannot seal God out. The stone closes the den, but it does not close heaven. There is also a detail that pulls you back to Esther's fasting. Darius spends the night without eating. The king fasts, even if he does not call it worship. Daniel's people in Esther's story fast because they seek God's favor. Darius fasts because he cannot fix what he has done. Both nights are sleepless nights. Both nights are nights where human strength runs out. And then dawn comes. Dawn always comes. Sometimes deliverance comes with it. Sometimes courage comes with it. Sometimes the next step comes with it. You might be standing in your own version of that dark den right now. You might be sealed in by someone else's decision. You might feel like the stone is already set. You might feel like the lions are already awake. If you are there, let Daniel's living voice meet you from the dark. Let him say again what he says in Daniel 6:22. My God sent his angel, and he shut the mouths of the lions. God does not always shut every lion's mouth the way you want. Sometimes he shuts the lion of despair by giving you peace that makes no sense. Sometimes he shuts the lion of shame by reminding you that you belong to him. Sometimes he shuts the lion of intimidation by putting a steady yes inside your chest when everyone expects you to fold. But hear the core claim. The lions do not have final authority. They have mouths, but they do not own the story. Now the hidden track turns back toward the bigger arc Esther points to. Esther risks her life to intercede for her people. Daniel risks his life to keep communion with God. Both stories echo the shape of a greater obedience. There is one who walks into a deeper darkness than a lion's den. There is one who faces a law heavier than the Medes and Persians. Sin demands payment. Death demands a body. Justice demands a verdict. And he does not avoid the inner court. He does not close the windows. He obeys. He enters. He gives himself. So when you hear Daniel say, "My God sent his angel," you can also remember that God sends more than an angel. God sends his Son. And because Jesus lives, obedience is not a gamble for you. It is a response to love already proven. That does not make the den feel less dark. It makes the dark less ultimate. So here is the reward for staying to the end. It is not a bonus fact. It is a final invitation with teeth in it. When the decree is published, do you still pray? When the risk is real, do you still give thanks? When the stone seals the opening, do you still trust that God is present in the dark? When morning comes, do you still run toward the place you fear, like Darius in Daniel 6:19, because hope pulls harder than dread? And if God rescues you, do you give him credit with your whole life? And if rescue looks different than you wanted, do you still serve him continually? Right now, in strict honesty, speak to God like Daniel speaks to God, not as a performance, as survival. If you can, pray this in your own words. Lord, the decree feels published. Lord, the den feels sealed. Lord, the lions feel near. But you are the living God. You endure forever. Your kingdom will not be destroyed. Your dominion will never end. Teach me to kneel again. Teach me to give thanks again. Teach me to trust you again. And as you rise from that prayer, remember the line that explains everything without hype. No wound was found on him, because he had trusted in his God, as Daniel 6:23 says. Not because Daniel is untouchable, because God is faithful. Stay faithful in your upstairs room. Stay faithful at your king's gate. Stay faithful in the inner court. Stay faithful at the mouth of the den, because the hand that seems hidden is still the hand that rules.